Hey guys, let's see, bringing you another video, and welcome to, I think, technically, the first high rating spectate of Season 12, or Season 2022. Let me know what you call it. I like to call it Season 12, but for some reason Riot wants to call it Season 2022. Anyway, the question that I'm here to ask, and then potentially answer is, should you be playing Kayle? Should I be playing Kayle? I've played Kayle for years. She actually originally in Season 3 was one of my first champions I used to get Diamond. It was like Kayle, Lux, Ryze, Jace, Zed. Those are like my champs back then. Anyway, Kayle in the hands of a good player is incredibly scary. Why? Well, because a lot of people have obviously started to take a PTA on tail, press the attack. It gives Kayle a bit more of a stronger early phase than she normally has. She's a very weak, or supposedly weak, champion early. But also, she is still a major hyper carry in late game. But especially with the teleport change, I feel Kayle might actually be worth considering again. Because Kayle doesn't want a chaotic early game. She doesn't want her lane opponent always roaming to bot lane, getting a double kill. She doesn't want to teleport the bot lane either. So that now that the meta is more about actually, oh, you're in mid lane, you stay in mid, or you're in top lane, you stay in top. That actually helps Kayle. She doesn't want a chaotic early game. Now, some people may say like, oh, do some Kayles take lethal tempo? Some do, some don't. I'd say this matchup, obviously, you have to be very careful. It's an assassin, you know, a Kayle, very strong champion herself, but it's a melee versus melee matchup pretty much. In a melee versus, well, in a melee versus range matchup where Kayle obviously starts melee, obviously she does become a range champion in time. That's maybe where you'd consider doing lethal tempo a bit more. But for, I think, most matchups, PTA Kayle is completely the thing to do. Because again, like I said earlier, it gives Kayle more strength in the early game than she normally would have. And all you're really looking for runes to give you is enough strength to get to level 6 at an okay rate. Like, you're not looking to be a head-on farm as Kayle at level 6. Hell, you're probably not even looking at any kills before level 6, obviously, unless something crazy happens. You're just kind of looking to get to level 6 as best you can. And PTA is going to help that the most. So you can see the Kayle is trying to have that lane presence of standing in front of the minions, standing in front of, you know, the Kayle's face, basically, saying, if you want to go a bit more forward, you have to get through me. If I just go over the Kayle runes, just to also go clear, by the way. So, press the attack, as we mentioned. Triumph. Alacrity, so all that attack speed, clearly very good for Kayle. And Last Stand, because you are going to be going lower health occasionally on Kayle. And then she's gone Resolve, so tankiness. Meanwhile, Lee Sin ganking mid. Bit of a weird gank, has to be said. Gets the cannon, which is always nice. But then has gone Overgrowth, Conditioning, and then attack speed, ability power, magic resist. So pretty standard. I would say the only thing is, obviously, Resolve second. That is just literally also to give the tankiness you need. Kayle is that strong with synergizing, one with her passive level 6, level 11, level 16, that she can basically take a tankier rune set because she doesn't need damage in her runes, you know, apart from PTA. Now, as we've mentioned, obviously, the meta is less about roaming than, like, it's been for a long time. That doesn't stop some champions roaming. Yes, that was First Blood, a Hecarim. A Kayle was down here also. Some champions, like a Kayle or Katarina, whatever it may be, they are designed to try and roam. Especially is you're against the Kayle, it's a ticking time bomb. It's going to eventually be insanely strong. There will be a time in this game that a Kayle will beat an Kayle in the match. Especially if Kayle goes Wit's End first item, magic resist built in. Lee Sin going for a gank, gets the Q, gets the sight. Flash does the Kayle into the Lee Sin damage. Oh, cancels the auto attack, gets the E, gets the kill. That is a huge kill. So, like, that's the example that really shouldn't be allowed. Like, a Kayle getting an early kill like that is insane. Really, obviously, nice Lee Sin play, hitting the Q. The Kayle also did the preemptive flash with the Kayle flash to make sure she can maintain distance on her. So that was overall really good. So now because the Kayle's roamed only got an assist, She is down on farm, she is down on XP, and you're against the Kayle. So on one hand, the Akali's roaming because the Kayle's playing safe in lane phase, so I can't snowball off the Kayle. Well, that means I need to go do something around the map to get ahead of the Kayle, but if it doesn't work, it really backfires. Now, tier 2 boot purchase by Kayle, really smart. Why? Again, as we mentioned, it's a melee matchup. Akali is technically a melee champion. But also, she's a skill shot champion. If she hits her E on you, then obviously she can stay on top of you. So movement speed's going to help, giving the more options to dodge, which obviously is not a bad thing. Now, one thing that interests me, by the way, if you look in the bottom left above the sponsor reel, the abilities for Kayle, she's got 2 points in Q and 2 points in E. I don't know why. I don't know if that's a mistake or anything. Not really sure, because normally you'd either max Q on Kayle or max E. I think nowadays maxing E is more common. Meanwhile, you can see Hecarim on the minimap. We're only getting vision that Kayle can see, so they know that Hecarim is below her right now. That Hecarim should actually be on this camp. And Lee Sin's here too. They're going to go for a gank. Remember, Hecarim is a non-flash-taking jungler, so he flashes, hits level 6, then goes to the engage. Wow, that's insane by Hecarim. Big play by the Sona trying to get there in time. Doesn't to save the Kayle, but they do get clean up on Isle Blue team. Twitch is just walking into the enemy, which is a bit bizarre. Also, this Twitch, what are you doing? It's an AP Twitch, so again, generally not great players play AP Twitch. But also really weird that you would do AP Twitch, I think anyway, because you've got an Akali. Like, that's a lot of AP damage. I don't think you need to go AP on Twitch. I will say, I'm biased against AP Twitch. I know I am. Maybe it's just I've had terrible AP Twitches. My average AP Twitch is terrible versus AD Twitch. They always do pretty good. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just I get good AD Twitches, bad AP ones. I'm not sure. But yeah, I just don't rate AP Twitch very heavily. Anyway, Kayle is now hit level 6. That E hit, really? Tower hit, though. Nice trade, evenish trade. But you have to be you have to be a bit safe when Akali is close to level 6, because she will go for that instant all-in if you're not expecting. But now that Kayle has hit level 6 in a relative safe manner, yes, she has died once, but she's also got that kill. She is now pretty happy. You're now playing, let's be honest, you're playing Kayle now that you finally hit level 6. So I'd imagine she's going to be just wanting to free farm, and that's the thing. Kayle is that kind of champion that I do think suits the meta quite nicely, that her early game isn't atrocious as it used to be. Like, you saw, like, she was actually fighting here or there with the Akali in the early game. You're not going to take a full fight, but she could kind of scrap the Akali. So you're not insanely weak anymore. And with the strength of items in League of Legends, and again, Akali's panicking, she can't do anything in the 1v1, she's roaming again. This whole time you've roamed has completely wasted her time. She's getting further behind in farm, she's giving tower plate away. This is the negative of roaming, but this is also the Akali's in the mindset of, I can't kill the Kayle anymore, because if I go all in, she's just going to ult herself, and she's going to be immune. So what do? This is why I'm considering playing Kayle again. And I will also say, I was looking at 2 Kayle players. So this player is in Master right now, already in the early season, which is very impressive. But there's 2 really good Master level Kayle one-tricks in the game right now. And they are beating, believe it or not, they are beating Victors and they're beating Corkis quite often as Kayle mid. And I literally think it's because Kayle is that insane hyper carry. Like, she is an absolute beast that can nearly 1v5 late game. And her early game is not bad. Not as bad as it used to be. And if you just survive, then you're going to be doing a lot of work later. And I think that just suits League of Legends really well at the moment, if I'm honest. This is a bit interesting. So big play potentially happening. Lee Sin going a bit whatever. Akali going all in. Misses her abilities. Kayle, though, doesn't get the hit. That's unfortunate. So low health. Look how low everybody is. This is... Oh! Lee Sin getting a bit of a clean. And that was just so close. That was really close of going really well for blue team. And instead it didn't go great. Lee Sin, nice play. Will he finish it? With the healing of Yuumi? He does, but then he'll die. Overall, a relative even fight, and I think Sona got caught at the beginning of the fight. She's not even level 6 yet. So if Sona was alive, didn't get caught, that would have been a lot closer. But it's a bit of a fiesta, and worth also mentioning, like I mentioned earlier, Kayle doesn't particularly want this. Kayle doesn't want fiestas in the early game. Now, some people say, oh, maybe she does want a fiesta. If her lane opponent's constantly busy, she just stays and farms. Sure, but Kayle mid, I'd say but Kayle top might want like a Fiesta that she's left alone. I'm going to farm for 15 minutes. Kayle mid, as a mid laner, you're compelled to be a bit more involved in the game early because you're the central point to the map. If a dragon's happening, you're expected to go over. Like, you're expected to help your team. Now, Twitch is doing the classic gank thing. She is going to get killed because of it, but Akali will die. So, you know, that's what Twitch does. He stops going bot lane, he ganks mid lane. And, you know, it's hard to guess. And what I would say, it was a well-timed gank because they timed it with Kayle. Obviously, she just used ultimate in that fight, so she wouldn't have had ultimate again just then. Kled doing a great job into Riven. Gets her flash, which is always good. Some Kleds obviously run TP Ignite. This one hasn't. He's actually got Ignite Flash, and that is a great example of what Flash can give you, is survivability, because if he got hit by that, he was probably dead. Anyway, big play happening in top lane, so Kled is getting all in. Unfortunately, doesn't get Skull quick enough, and Lee Sin, I would not go in on that, so he will back away there. So far, people say you're watching a Kayle. She's 1-3, Huz. Like, that's not great. And this is the kind of another point that why I do think it may be worth considering playing Kayle. If you're playing something average strength mid to late game right now and you're 1-3, you're probably a bit nervous. Is this player right now nervous being 1-3-5 with, you know, she's heading far, but is this player nervous at all? Nope, because they're playing Kayle. You know when you're playing Kayle that you're going to become an absolute monster eventually. If the game lasts long enough, I will become monster. That's the point. Is you don't have to play nervous. You can get a bit behind in the early game, and that's okay. Like, sure, it'd be great if you don't, and that's also the bonus thing. If you get ahead in the early game somehow, well, the game's practically over. You're playing Kayle that got ahead in the early game. But if you get behind, again, not a big deal. So again, another big gank comes in. Hecarim mid lane again. Good Kayle ulti. Yuumi gets killed mid-air on the way to Hecarim. Good flash. Hecarim cannot follow. Be careful here, because you don't want Hecarim magically getting this kill, or Twitch showing up and getting the kill there, because that's what a Twitch does. Twitch ignores bot lane sometimes. Twitch is the equivalent of Katarina or Akali, but in bot lane. That's what he does. That's what he's known to do. He stops going bot, he ganks mid a bunch. But honestly, still pretty good for Kayle outcome. 2 kills for Kayle at this stage of the game. If you look at the gold lead right now between mid lane, you've got overall 4.8k gold about to be versus 3.6. Kayle is over 1,000 gold ahead of a lane opponent, and it's only 12 minutes into the game. Akali's returned to mid lane and then just got annihilated by a Kai'Sa. Again, a very strong champion right now in modern day League. Hecarim ganking mid lane again, has low mana though, gets the ultimate off. Sona in trouble, flashes. Can she do anything else? Can Kai'Sa DPS? Not enough, and Akali will pick up a kill there. Unfortunate, but again, Sona is one of the squishiest champions in League, so she's always going to be a priority for a Hecarim ult or something like that. Lane swap has occurred, which I will say does confuse me a bit. I don't know, well, Kayle's probably just gone bot lane because Kai'Sa was in mid. It is a bit of a weird time of the game for that to happen, I will say. Like, there's no towers that have been taken or anything. Kayle's in trouble if Hecarim goes to this dive. Kayle does not have ult yet. It's over a minute away. She's hugging the tower. Lee Sin is here, though. What can they do? Here we go. DPS Kayle, just keep on attacking. Is getting killed by the Twitch long range. Lee Sin couldn't do enough, but Lee Sin picks up the kill eventually, separating the Yuumi from the Hecarim. That will be a sad Yuumi right now. Nice Lee Sin Q with the Kai'Sa damage into the kill on the Hecarim. So overall, really good. The enemy team, I will say, is playing hyper-aggressive, and sometimes it's worked for them, but sometimes it really backfires. And that is an example right there of it backfiring. Unfortunately, there's no... Well, actually, I say that. No, that's actually a really bad time. Dragon is spawning in 15 seconds. So that death right there, in theory, should give blue team their first dragon, equalizing the dragons to be 1-all. Kayle, though, did just teleport, by the way, mid lane. So if we get our attention back on the Kayle. Item has been complete Nash's Tooth. First item is typically the first item you always buy on Kayle. Like, you know, she is one of those champions that doesn't have to go on Mythic first. And that's fine. It gives her everything she needs. 2 control wards also being killed by Kayle. Again, never ignore those. 60 gold that Kayle just got for clearing 2 wards. That's not bad. Dive happening in top lane. That Kled is diving the Riven under tower. And he managed to pull it off. Hecarim with the Akali and the Yuumi going mid lane again. So mid lane has been a very big focus this game. arguably it makes sense because, you know, don't let a Kayle have a free lane phase, otherwise that's a really bad idea. But what you're doing then is, if Yuumi is now perma-attaching to the horse, you're running mid lane, you know, blue team have spotted that they were there right here, you go all in on the Twitch who's now alone. That's a quite big negative. So we don't know where Akali's gone. So Kayle, though, is nearly level 11. And, you know, I said earlier, when you hit level 6 as Kayle, that's kind of when you start playing Kayle. Well, it's even more true when you hit level 11. The AoE damage, when you start actually dealing the extra bit of damage, is when you truly are like, okay, I am now strong. And that's the weird thing about Kayle. There are some champions in League that are very much item-bound champions, which is true for all champions, don't get me wrong. But there are also some champions in League, and we know a few of them, that are level champions. Kayle is one of them, level 16, or level 6, level 11, level 16. Obviously, quite big power spikes for Kayle. She directly gets stronger. That makes her ability stronger as her item, as her level increases. You know, the spell itself becomes stronger. Another champion that is known as a level champion is Kassadin. You hit level 16 as Kassadin, and that's when he officially becomes Kassa Win. Because arguably, it's basically a free game at that point when you hit level 16 on him. There are some champions that scale with levels more than others. And that's, you know, that's League of Legends. I like that there's differences between early, mid-game champions, and that does exist. Obviously, the game right now, League of Legends as a whole, it's more dominated by scaling champions, I would say, more than early game champions. You will see sometimes early game champions exist in the game, especially like in pro play where they're using comps and stuff like that. But overall in solo queue, mid-game scaling to late game scaling champions are the dominating champion that exists in the game. A part of that as well is how strong the items are. You hit late game, or the feel of late game now, much earlier than you ever used to. So that is part of it. Like, there was a good clip the other day that it was on Reddit of a pro talking about, it was a clip that a Veigar was getting engaged on by an Olaf, and the Olaf had 3 items complete. And this was maybe 3, 4, 5 seasons ago the clip was from. The Olaf was basically dealing no damage and did eventually get killed by the Veigar. And if that was modern day, nice Kayle ulti on the Hecarim there, if that was modern day, that Veigar would have probably got one shot by the Olaf. And that's just the difference. When you get 1 item or 2 items and you have the strength, more strength as a champion individually than you did when you had 3 items years ago, the feel of late game is so much earlier than it used to be. Like, Kayle right now has got 1.5 items and she's strong. Like, literally, she's going to be dealing a lot of damage. People should be scared of this Kayle. That is modern day League. So that's why I do think playing a hyper carry champion like Kayle is a good thing to do. And it's why in my champion pool video, obviously I didn't include Kayle, but that's why I thought I'd give this a little bit of a watch, because what I didn't want is, oh my god, the Kayle just stomped the early game and suddenly she's really overpowered. This, to me, is going to become, and is becoming, a standard game of Kayle. Teleport mid lane. Twitch out of position, flashes, gets killed. Riven in the middle. Kayle, I think, doesn't have ulti, does not. Is just doing DPS, just constantly attacking. Now the Hecarim is with the Lee Sin. Just DPS, DPS, DPS. Helps get the kill on the Lee Sin. Riven back over with the Yuumi. What can the Kayle do? She's in a 1v3 situation. There's another kill. There's another kill. And this is the point. This is supposed to be 18 minutes in the game. This isn't supposed to be late game. Kayle is wrecking face. She's got 1.5 items. That's why I'm considering picking up Kayle. Also, I will say, I enjoy playing Kayle. So that also helps. So this obviously is Kayle mid lane. You can still play Kayle top. Both have a similar playstyle. They build basically identical. There's not really a difference. And I will also say, Kayle is actually quite good in, if you're somebody that likes to have balanced team comps, like if you're, oh, our comp is full AD, or our comp has too much magic damage, there is actually, so this is the standard build of Kayle, it's the AP attack speed build. There actually is an AD carry build with Kayle. Now, that doesn't mean you take it bot lane and run it as an AD carry, no. But if your team is randomly full magic, and you're like, oh god, we actually could do with some damage, AD here, there is an AD carry build you can do on Kayle, and it, weirdly, has equally amount as carry potential. You can absolutely hyper carry with the AD carry build as well. So it's worth thinking about. Hecarim goes in. what can happen here? This is not a good fight. Kayle goes down, saves the Lee Sin, which is good. They're on the back foot, though. Kled is now showing up. Here we go. Let the fight begin. Kayle's DPSing on the side. No one's attacking Kayle. That's the thing as well. No one's attacking her. Look at the difference between her and Twitch. There's literally not a... You know, you can't even compare the two. And easy fight. So, the Hecarim, who's a very strong champion in himself. You buy one. Oh, is it a Penta? I don't even know if it's a Penta, hopefully. Don't think so. But yeah, like... Kayle is now in... That's the point that I love that I've done this commentary already, because this has been a typical game of Kayle. That she did not start by getting hyperfed early. She actually had a pretty rough early game in that she was 1-3 at one stage. 1 kill, 3 deaths. And now, suddenly, she started to hyper carry out of nowhere. That is Kayle. And she's not even level 16. That's the thing. She only gets stronger. And that, you know, she only gets stronger. She's only got 2 items complete. 3 if you want to include boots. If she gets a full build, she has 3 more full items that she could build. How much stronger will this Kayle get? Incredibly stronger, that's the point. So Baron is now being complete. They managed to get it. Yuumi ult randomly over to the side, which again, weirdly, is given the position of Akali in her stealth, or camo, whatever it's called. They need to just back out. Again, the enemy team is on their way. They probably want to try and get a couple revenge kills if they can, so not all of the enemy team has got Baron, but no, they will finally back out, and that is good. Gold-wise, if we look into it now, 10.5k gold versus 6.9. So Kayle is just going more and more and more gold. She's nearly the richest person in the game. The Lee Sin right now is the richest person by just over 100 gold. But this, to me, has been a great example of Kayle. And let me know, do you think I should pick up Kayle again? I'm really tempted. And that's the thing. She can play mid and top. So, you know, you can just play Kayle. And the weird thing as well, because she doesn't win early game, I actually could see Kayle being an okay blind pick. Because you don't play Kayle for lane phase, do you? So you're playing Kayle for scaling eventually. Therefore, what does it matter who you're technically playing against? Just play Kayle and scale. You know, play safe early, don't feed, get to level 6, and you can start to free farm a bit better. And suddenly, you can carry the game eventually. Like, I always blind pick. I think that's kind of like a thing people know for some reason. So I am seriously considering picking up Kayle officially again, because she's hyper carry. You don't have to do great early, but it's a bonus if you do. If you get jungle pressure and you scale, amazing. If you don't get jungle pressure, well, again, you're playing Kayle anyway. You're not supposed to have a good early game. You can do an AD carry build on her. So if your team is randomly full AP, you can do an AD carry build, but you standardly do an AP carry build. She's fun to play for me, to be honest. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm really tempted, and I think I'm going to. Like, that's where I'm leaning right now. Kled, I think, tried to dive a tier 2 tower in bot lane. Didn't go well, as he died. But we did also see Riven teleport down there. So unfortunately, even though Riven probably would have wanted to teleport up here instead, she teleported down bot lane to, I think, arguably try to save the Akali, but the teleport was just late. So teleport back is the Kayle. Is she got a power spike, death cap? She based for a reason, which was death cap. So she gets death cap. She does have teleport if something bad happened and she needed to go help her team. I'm completely fine with that. It's a big power spike. As a Kayle, she's got 557 ability power. That's a lot of ability power for a Kayle. So, yeah, I'm completely fine with that. Obviously, she's got 10 Dark Seal stacks. That's really nice to have. Would Kayle ever upgrade it to a Magi? I doubt it, to be honest. I do actually think there's better items for Kayle than a Magi, and that might surprise people. But yeah, Kayle benefits of other things. Like a Zhonya is quite a good item on Kayle to eventually save you and stuff like that. So, you know, maybe you could buy a Magi. It's, you know, it's going to help your damage, no doubt. But yeah. So getting to level 16... Obviously, it takes longer to get to level 16 if, like, teammates are next to you soaking up some experience, but they would want Kayle to be level 16, there's no doubt. She will get there, it's just going to take a bit of time. So the open inhibitor, I think, is looking quite tempting. So you got Akali top, Riven bot lane. If I was blue team, just completely rush. Kled ult, straight onto that inhib. That's what I would do. Completely engage. Go, go, go. So there's the W, into the engage. They get the Twitch. Not the engage I was expecting. There's the Kled ult finally. But yeah, when you've got 2 side laners, get the inhib. Why wouldn't you do that? And now the enemy team is on the back foot. They've lost their Twitch. So they don't have that strength anymore in the backline, just shooting the poison. Akali might be tilted because she's not coming back at all. And now the fight is beginning. Kayle ult not used yet. Lee Sin kick, nice on Riven, dominating Kayle. Now the Kayle ult comes through a bit early, to be honest. Towers are going down. Kayle's still not level 16. So this is the point. Her damage, as you can see, is really high. She hasn't even hit level 16. So she didn't become the true hyper carry yet. Yet, after 1.5 items, she did start to hyper carry. That is why I think you should play Kayle, and that's why I think I'm going to pick up Kayle again. But that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed, let me know what you think down below. Comment and subscribe and like, and that'll be amazing. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.